Hi, I'm Torte. Finally, after many months, patch 7.38 is here, and there's a lot to go through, so let's make this fast. I would summarize this patch in three ways. One, there are significant adjustments to the overall balance of heroes, reducing both the applicability of certain spells and hero choices, especially for supports and carries. You'll see heroes like no longer being universal attributes, or having their strength and their health significantly reduced, or their abilities now no longer being able to affect illusions or farm creeps faster. This all kind of approach is to kind of curb down just how good some heroes were and make room for others, especially illusion heroes, which we'll talk about in a bit. Two, the map has changed and we'll go over it in detail, but the skinny of it is that the map increase in the New Frontier patch that you saw years ago was great, but it also made navigating that huge map all the more harder in many ways and too big for some heroes who are honestly kind of slow. It caused kind of the larger map to not only be sometimes detrimental to navigate, but also made invading the enemy side a very inefficient use of your time. So ganking, let's say, a carry that's all the way at the bottom of the corner map, not really feasible when you can't really see because of the limitations of wards, and unfortunately also the fact that it was just harder to get down there all the time and find where he was specifically or where the carry was specifically. So this new map may still feel large, but it will feel also kind of closer in some respect and spread out in others. You will find that the game is really trying to force more confrontations, fights, and ganks from the early to the mid game, with some objectives being redesigned or moved closer to contestable areas, aka the center kind of area spot. Anyway, number three, neutral items are more customizable. Instead of Valve trying to do and redo and recreate neutral items at different tiers to accommodate all heroes, it's now up to you, the player, to pick and choose what you want and how you want it. So let's break down the big changes. And as always, if you like these videos, make sure to support me by liking and subscribing. So map changes, let's talk about it. For starters, there are now two river currents on the map. The first one is much more noticeable. It's at the top and bottom of the map and increases your movement speed when moving away from the base towards the opposing corner of the map. You can see my movement speed is increased, but it does not decrease if I move in the opposite direction. The river current is valuable in three ways. One, it helps allies who died from safe lane to get back to the lane faster if their TP is on cooldown. Two, it helps allies farm this outer part of the map faster. And three, it can help enemies gank this side of the map in conjunction with the other river current. The secondary river current gives less movement speed when moving from center to the safe lane part of the map, but it helps in two key ways. One, it makes crossing the jungle much faster, so for roaming mids or just to reach the bottom lane more efficiently. Or two, it shifts your farming pattern downward as opposed to across, and you can see how this deeply affects the inner lane jungle camps, where instead of it being tiered by two somewhat nearby sections, the river cuts and pushes a lot of elements back, like bounty hunters are not really efficient to be picked up by mid laners less than before, and nearby jungle camps for mid laners can't be as comfortably stacked for some special mid laners like Storm Spirit or even Lina or even Ember Spirit, nor can they be farmed as efficiently without losing time and experience in the lane. It's now much easier to gank mid laners with how much open space and even a high ground available nearby, etc. The ramifications of this map change has yet to really be analyzed, but you can already tell that a lot of openness around the center and a push towards the bottom makes this map feel smaller, even though it's still large, and more accessible at different stages of the game, and thus more active. The rest of the changes are forcing, again, more confrontation, right? So wisdom runes are now no longer runes, but these shrines in which you must stand in it. And if there's an enemy also standing within the shrine, you are confronted to then stop them, or you are confronted to defeat them. Otherwise, you can't capture the shrine. It will get paused pretty much. Same thing with Lotus pools. The moment you walk in here, you can collect all these free Lotus regeneration, healing Lotuses. However, if an enemy jumps in, then unfortunately you need to defeat them or push them out so you can continue effectively channeling to get these Lotuses. Roshan is now no longer in the bottom right corner because, again, it didn't really force confrontation, but rather made people feel like it was a lost cause to travel all the way there if the enemy had already started doing Roshan. It's hard to get people to rally over. So now Roshan is in the middle. In the middle, where, where he once was many patches ago, many years ago, before he was used to be in this little area here when Dota 2 first started. Now he's here in the river, and he serves as a reminder. Every 15 minutes, he will literally change where he spawns from bottom right to top left, and he'll remind anybody here in the middle who's dumb enough to hang around that Roshan is nearby and ready to be taken. If you are in his path as he crosses, he'll pick you up and throw you around and deal damage. And also, more importantly, you can now damage him as he crosses the river. So things like Techie's Mines, or even you as a team can kind of meet him at the river, beat him down before anybody realizes that you're doing Roshan. I don't know how that's going to be possible, but people might be able to pull it off, and pick up his beautiful Aegis along with other items. One last thing, or two last things rather, the Tormentor is now at the bottom right corner. If you and your team destroy the Tormentor, all of you get 250 gold, as well as an Aghanim shard to the person with the least amount of net worth, or randomly to the person with the least amount of net worth. What's more, you can also see Twin Gates are also here at a nice high ground position that's much more open. So if you decide to roam from bottom to the top or top to the bottom, it's now much easier to kind of not be seen, let's say, so to speak, or to start off without anybody knowing that you're nearby, and it's very convenient to come at different paths here or here. And there are also new neutral camps with those flooded areas of rivers, right? You can see the Polywog, the Boglet, the Marsh Mage Apprentice. There's also new ancient camps, Ancient Croaker, Ancient Marsh Mage, which we can see towards the tier 1 safe lane tower. So a lot of new changes and a lot of new neutral creeps as the power creep has grown up in Dota 2. Okay, if you're like me, you probably read this new Madstone neutral items situation and got kind of confused. Let me just talk about it real quick. So there's two biggest problems with neutral items, which I'm sure most of you know. One, the randomization of neutral item drops didn't always give players what they wanted. And two, it was impossible for the developers to balance those tiers of neutral items perfectly without, some overlap in how they functioned, or there's some biasness towards certain heroes. This new system also solves a third problem that I personally like to bitch about. People forgetting to upgrade their neutral items, which was so effing annoying. So this new system puts the decision and upgrading your neutral items directly in the player's hand. It has a new indicator that yells at you to upgrade your new neutral item, and people don't have to remember about this third tab in the shop to see what neutral items they can upgrade to. Let's break it down real quick for you. So for starters, instead of cleaning neutral, instead of getting, wiping out jungle creeps for neutral items, you now get Madstone currency instead, which is just collectibles to eventually afford a neutral item. Now, neutral items are now broken down in two parts, right? One, instead of a neutral item giving you stats and a really cool effect like Iron Talon letting you reduce the health of an ancient or neutral creep by like 30% or whatever percent it is, it's now broken in two parts. One is called artifacts, which is that Lotus effect that we talked about. The Iron Talon we're talking about, where the Iron Talon lowers the health of a target or a neutral creep. And then now there's something called enchantments, which is the stats that we talked about, attack speed or intelligence or regeneration, etc. So instead of clearing jungle camps and just getting a neutral item that's bundled with these obligatory stats and effects, you now can choose your neutral item effect, which is called artifacts, and they still have tiers and they still spawn at every 5 minutes. And enchantments are just the additional stats to go with your neutral item. So let's say instead of, as I said, getting the Iron Talon that gives attack speed, you can now have an Iron Talon that can still be used to lower the health of a creep, but instead of agility, instead of attack speed, it gives agility, or it gives intelligence, or it gives mana regeneration. So basically the new system does two things. One, it gives more specific customization for the player, both in what neutral items, now artifacts, and what they do and what the players want, but also the stats that they need. Okay, let's break down some items real quick. For bottled, no longer refills when carrier has a lingering fountain regeneration buff. Carrier must physically be in the fountain. So no longer you can see, like, say, Storm Spirit zipping from all the way from the fountain all the way to the enemy side and just spamming bottle while he still has that lingering effect. Can't do that anymore. Can't have, I don't know, like Crystal Maiden TPing from base to the mid lane to receive a bottle to refill it. That doesn't work anymore. It really cuts down on, you would see it as a higher level play. You wouldn't see this at lower level plays. So it really cuts down on some of the bullshit that some heroes could get free bottles just because the support died and conveniently TP'd mid. Another big change is the Abyssal Blade. It's no longer Skullbasher Vanguard and a recipe. It's now Skullbasher, Sange, and a recipe. A little more applicable in terms of the value it can bring towards the late game, right? Damage block towards, 45 minutes, not really that interesting. Having a Sange give you, much more strength, give you some slow resistance, and give you health and lifesteal amp is obviously much more scalable in the late game. and the cost is relatively the same, right? 6250, so still an expensive item, but at least it's more applicably valuable for everybody rather than just melee carries. Okay, talk about Gleipnir. So recipe changed, requires point booster instead of a maelstrom. The recipe cost has gone up, but the overall cost of the item is cheaper from 5750 to 4550. Now also provides an AoE bonus and 200 mana. They replaced, basically, I'm not going to talk about it, but Bloodstone no longer gives AoE bonus. It's now on Gleipnir. The intelligence has also been decreased, evidently, and Eternal Chains no longer deals damage. So when you cast its active component of Gleipnir, no longer deals damage. The radius is slightly smaller, but with the AoE bonus that you get from the Gleipnir, doesn't really change anything. And then the mana cost has also been decreased. And obviously, since no more Maelstrom, no more Chain Lightning ability. The bottom line is, I think you can pretty much infer what this means is that, one, it's more accessible. Thus, you will probably see more supports by it, or at least offlaners. And it's not offlaners that like need to farm. It's just a generalized item that gives a lot of stats, that gives a lot of mana and health. Now, if the AoE bonus means that, you know, anybody can pick this up. And on top of that, they will, all their abilities will have, and even their items, sometimes their item effects will have an AoE bonus attached to it. So basically, they're just bringing Gleipnir to be more accessible for everybody rather than just seeing it on like 5 heroes like Hoodwink, Weaver, some other ones that you can name of, leave ones in the comment. And as well as the AoE bonus is now no longer on the Bloodstone, which not everybody wants. It's now on the Gleipnir, which everybody would probably like to have because it's an additional crowd control item that gives a pretty decent bonus. So pretty good change. I like this a lot. Now Maelstrom buyers can only buy Mjolnir. So we should talk about Heaven's Halberd in view of Abyssal Blade. For one, it's cheaper. They don't tell you what the original cost was, but it used to be like 3,500, so now it's 2,600. It provides 275 health, 6 health regen, and +5 all attributes, and it has a damage block now because it comes from Vanguard, as well as a crown and ring of regen. So pretty good for offlaners, especially tanky offlaners. The unfortunate part, though, the disarm of Heaven's Halberd can now be dispelled. Mana cost is significantly lower, and the duration on ranged heroes decreased from 5 to 4. So you can get it. Typically, you can get it much earlier. It's more applicable for very strength-related heroes. You don't get the evasion, which was one of the last values I would personally say for Heaven's Halberd. However, because you can get it much earlier, probably earlier than most people want to get BKB, or let's say have some sort of dispel with fuels or something, just an example. Because you can get it much earlier, it can now do pretty good against, let's say, physical damage dealers who are ganking. Let's say against Spectre, or I guess maybe Nature's Prophet, etc. Even though Nature's Prophet is range, you probably could still do it. That's just off the top of my head. So I like the change overall. It gives Heaven's Halberd an earlier timing, so it has more of interest and consideration. However, the trade-off is a little more minimized, right? It's more about heroes that want this, that want to go Vanguard, more importantly, and can take advantage of the damage block. Okay, I'm only talking about these items because some of you guys have an absolute hard-on, a massive erection for Phylactery and Conda. I personally hate these items, so to see them nerfed is good for me. If you play Tiny, you can pretty much forget about these items, especially with the Tiny nerfs. I feel the Crash Landing nerfs has made the hero very, very difficult to as efficiently gank as he was before. But effectively, Phylactery and Power Spell cooldown is now, the cooldown has been increased significantly by double. The movement slow has been decreased, and the slow duration has also been increased by 3 seconds. So it's not that great, to be honest, personally. But maybe not noticeable for most of you, especially with certain spells, like let's say Abaddon. Some people like it on Abaddon. Maybe you won't notice this change all that much. For Conda, it's been reworked, right? Instead of Crystallis, it now has a Tiara of Celimene instead. The recipe cost has also been increased from 500 to 1500, and thus it's now much more expensive, 5100 to 5900. But it gives some mana regen instead of some damage, and it no longer has a critical strike ability. It no longer deals your attack damage. It gives inherent bonus damage from 150 to 250, and it applies a break to the target, disabling their passive abilities for the duration. So now there's two break considerations. One is break with Silver Edge, and now the break with Conda and Power Spell applying a break. So it's more situationally interesting and valuable, but more importantly, it gives more opportunities for non-Silver Edge buyers, so supports especially, or even spellcasters, to have a Conda and now can use it to break passive abilities like Monkey King's Jingo Mastery, or Bristleback's Bristleback, or Ursa's Fury Swipes, etc. On top of that, the movement slow has been decreased, and the spell debuff duration increased from 1.5 to 3 seconds, just like Phylactery. So, situationally consider it. Very expensive item nonetheless. Okay, let's talk about heroes. I know I skipped some things about neutral items, some new neutral items, spider legs returning, etc. I know I skipped the part about how Lifestealer has been streamlined, but for the sake of time, let's just go straight to heroes. I'll highlight some notable major hero changes and quickly go through some nerfs that are worth making note of. Lastly, for starters, a lot of heroes are no longer universal attribute, so that basically heavily affects their damage output and growth. Heroes like Lone Druid and Lycan, they're no longer being universal attribute. That minimizes the items that they would typically go for, that gave them a well-roundedness in survivability, attack speed, and damage output. And number two, hero abilities like Lion and Pugna sometimes have no longer effect on illusion heroes. This effectively gives illusion heroes and Manta users a bit more room to be picked more, but reduces the heroes counters for these heroes when they're being picked. The first change we should talk about is Abaddon. I don't understand. Wasn't Abaddon really strong last patch? I know he was kind of the counter to a lot of heroes at the time, and because this game is shifting entirely away from, let's say, Sange and Lifesteal and Sustain of these carry heroes, will Abaddon now be less picked, or is he still such a viable good pick here? They increase his base damage, they decreased intelligence by 1, but they made his strength and his agility also increased as well. So I'm a little bit confused. I think it's a balance out from the damage gain per levels being decreased. One last thing is the quickening, which I honestly think is not the most popular facet to be picked. Most people choose the Mephitic Shroud. The cooldown has been reduced per hero death from 4 to 6. Pretty great there, as well as the level 10 talent. It used to have a 15% charisma average of movement slow. That's been replaced with 10% Withering Mist healing reduction. The Withering Mist healing reduction was kind of the cornerstone of Abaddon being such a good counter to last patch. Losing that 15% charisma average movement slow means that he's so much less efficient during the early game when you are maxed out on Curse of Avernus and you have a Harpoon or Echo Saber. So Alchemist, really simple. He's now got 3 facets. One is the one you probably use the most, Seed Money. Number 2 is Mixologist, and number 3 is Dividends. The new Dividends facet is effectively a late game version of Alchemist. So if early game, Seed Money is about having larger starting goals, so you can have better early game start in terms of your stats and thus get your mid game items like Radiance, etc. much more quickly. While Grievous Greed is the end point of that. Grievous Greed is giving you 75 GPM for each Agonist Scepter you have granted to your allies. That's really the basic gist of how to view Dividends in contrast to its other facets. Okay, this one's a doozy. It's Arc Warden. He's now a universal attribute hero, which is just mind-blowing. Zet has been attuned to the new frontiers and no longer has Tempest versions of them abilities. So now the Order and Disorder facets no longer work. More importantly, you don't have to remember what Arc Warden or his Tempest Double, how they differ in terms of their abilities. Now they're one of the same, just like before. He's got 2 new facets instead of Order and Disorder. He's got Rune Replica, which is Tempest Double is infused with the bonuses of Power Runes for 10 seconds when created. So every time you create your secondary unit Tempest Double, he starts with an Invisibility Rune. He has then Invisibility Rune and Arcane Rune, and then they have Invisibility, Arcane, and Haste Rune. So very annoying because his cooldown has also been reduced from 80 seconds at max level to now 50 seconds. So every less than a minute, you're going to get shit on by a Tempest Double. Smurfs are going to love that. Power Capture is the other facet that's also been available. Runic Infusion. Arc Warden gains 1.5 all attributes permanently upon activating any power rune. So very good in the early game, assuming you can grab at least 1 water rune and grab those power runes at the 4 or at the 6, 8, 10, 12, whatever minute. Magnetic Field. Once created, the field pulls all runes in the 1200, 18, 24, 3000 radius towards it with increasing speed. Any rune that's within the magnetic field or is pulled into it is automatically activated. And that means you get the attributes permanently upon activating any power rune. And the rune acceleration is about 150. Pretty nuts. So this one feels like it's kind of like a late game snowball effect of being able to kind of push or do a lot of damage or even chase down people, gank a lot with maybe a boot to travel into your Tempest Double having Invisibility, Arcane, and Haste runes. And then the Power Capture seems really good for the early to mid game, which is kind of the 2 spectrums of Arc Warden, right? Early game, he has a lot of gankability potential, especially with his Tempest Double, and with, let's say, Spear Vessel, that's back in the day before his Order Disorder facets. And now the Ruin Replica looks like it could be a really annoying split push hero that just makes me want to shoot myself in the face. So really exciting. Can't you hear my excitement? I'm so excited. The Flux, now the same for both Tempest Double and yourself. It can be upgraded by Aghanim Scepter. So Aghanim Scepter used to be able to pull a rune out from the ground as a new ability for Arc Warden, I believe. And now this one, whenever you use Flux, it silences when the target is alone, increases damage by 50% and duration by 2 seconds. I think this used to be like a level 25 talent for Arc Warden. Now it's an Aghanim Scepter, so you can get it earlier if you want. Magnetic Field is now a point targeted ability with a 900 cast range, so no longer do you have to press W and it casts around yourself or the Tempest Double. It now can be casted wherever, just like before. Can be double tap for self cast, as you know. Now has the same effect both Arc Warden and Tempest Double. Creates a circular distortion field that grants 100% evasion and 120 bonus attack speed to all allied units within. Yeah, no longer upgraded Ag Shard. We knew this already. Okay, Spark Wraith now has the same effect for both of them. Of course, Spark activates in 1.5 seconds. Obviously captures someone, slows them for a brief second, and deals damage. No longer has 40% more damage to non-hero units. Again, they're reducing how certain abilities and units, heroes can farm neutral creeps, or in jungle can wave camps. It's now going to take a little bit longer, so the speed in which people are accruing gold is now slower. It has an upgrade of Aghanim Shard. When Spark Wraith activates, a secondary spark will fuse with the closest next target that deals 80% damage. Increases Spark Wraith search radius by 100. Not fun. So if you don't remember the old Spark Wraith, there used to be the Spark Wraith version of Arc Warden where you could just stack up a bunch of Spark Wraiths and then it would slow and then it would summon a new one and that would slow that one, slow the target again, etc., etc. So I'm hoping this is more balanced out than the last time I remember, but I could be wrong. Cooldown decreased to 50 seconds. We talked about it. The duration has also been decreased from 60 to 24 seconds, but you have a haste and invisibility rune, so maybe you can make it work. The Tempest Double no longer has penalties when it's more than 2,000 range away from Arc Warden, and no longer the ability restarts if the Tempest Double is killed by enemies, so you don't have to be as careful as before, though you obviously still give a bounty if the Tempest Double dies. And over time, it loses itself in fractions over time, becoming slower and less accurate. Max missed chance 35%, max self-slow 35%. So the Tempest Double is more efficient at the beginning, but towards the end, obviously, it's less capable of snagging a kill. There's a chance it might miss its attack, or it might be slowed after haste effect has run out. So overall, really interesting change for Arc Warden. Seems, my personal opinion, is going to come across very strong, but we'll have to see just how balanced out he is in real matches. Let's talk about Chaos Knight real quick. They removed his Phantasmagoria facet, so now all his illusions are not super illusions, so they could be targeted down for sure, unfortunately. However, here abilities like Lion or Pugna with their Life Drain or their Mana Drain, I think it's called, or Mana Seal, whatever, from Lion, no longer gets rid of illusions. So that's kind of a balancing there. Phantasmagoria was actually really strong because they had a chance of summoning more illusions than you were offered, so it's pretty much a good deal whenever you had it occur, especially from Manta Style or from your own ultimate ability. Now there's two facets: Fundamental Forging. Fundamental Forging, when Chaos Knight crafts a neutral item, 2 of his artifact choices will be for the current tier, and 2 of his choices will be for the next tier. Artifacts are, again, what we used to call neutral items, right? Iron Talon, etc. These are the effects are now going to be at the current tier, and the 2 of his choices are going to be at the next tier. He doesn't get the option to keep his current artifact between tiers. Now, Cloven Chaos, Chaos Bolt. Chaos Bolt splits in half upon striking his target, stunning 1 additional enemy and damaging another. Prioritizes heroes. Bounce rate 60% of the ability's cast range. Additional targets do not create shard illusions, because when you with Ag Shard, when you throw out Chaos Bolt, it would create an illusion. It still does, however, now if it bounces, it doesn't so much. So in my opinion, these 2 facets, they're just not that appealing, to be honest. I mean, Cloven Chaos is nice, especially for team fights, if you're not fighting any other illusion heroes. However, Fundamental Forging, it really depends on how impactful these neutral items are. I know a lot of people at my level, the average game level, don't really see neutral items as that effective in your matches. It's kind of just an additional thing that helps make things a little bit easier towards the mid game. However, maybe with the new system, it's going to be a little more clear about how effective these neutral items are going to be with the artifact and enchantment effects. Cloven Chaos, again, it's great for fighting. And that's kind of Chaos Knight. Chaos Knight fights mid-game. He likes to snowball with a few items like Blink Orchid and Armlet, or Armlet Manta Style. I've seen that as well with a BKB in there. Now, the upside for Chaos Knight is the fact that his Chaos Strike has gotten improved. It used to be 70% for creep penalty from the lifesteal. Now it's 40% because of the global changes to lifesteal as a whole. So, yeah, it's a mix of good and bad, right? Phantasmagoria is a big loss, but you do get a better farming capability of Chaos Strike. And Cloven Chaos is not the worst. I think it could be really appealing, especially in fights, but let's see. So Crystal Maiden has received a lot of cool new facets. They removed her old ones, but the new ones are kind of interesting, right? The first one was Arcane Overflow, or Arcane Aura can be activated, and it gives Crystal Maiden 35% spell amplification, but increases her mana cost of her abilities by 50%. So really big demand in terms of her cost, and especially in the early to mid game, you can see that's quite brutal for someone like Crystal Maiden. However, while active at any time Crystal Maiden uses her other abilities, allied heroes within 1200 radius receive 25% of the mana spent. So heroes that rely on using a lot of their spells, or have like an ability like, let's say, Silencer and Glaives of Wisdom, it can be really nice to have this ability activated to get some of that mana back. Or let's say you're playing with OD and you don't have that many points in his passive, then this also could be really appealing to get some of that mana back. Of course, it's only for maybe 1 or 2 abilities, because the ability duration is paused during the freezing field, can't be cast during the ultimate with Aghanim Scepter, but still has full effect. So in the end, I see this ability as it could be really appealing just for the fact that you have 35% spell amplification, even if your mana cost is increased by 50%. For early game ganks, you can definitely activate this just for the basis of the fact that you're going to freeze someone down and slow them, but on top of that, deal massively more damage. So it's a lot easier to wipe people out with Crystal Maiden. Now, the second facet, the Glacial Guard, is a little more straightforward. Basically, when you cast Crystal Nova, which is your AoE for stability, it increases the radius by 100 and grants allied heroes in the affected area 40, 70, 100, 130 physical barrier for 4 seconds. Crystal Maiden receives double the barrier. So I can see most people probably picking this one more. It's a little more straightforward. It's a little less of a downside. My personal opinion, as I've said before, is that facets that have trade-offs are not as appealing as those that are just straight up better, or just straight up an upgrade. So this Crystal Nova giving a barrier, physical barrier for 4 seconds on a low cooldown like Crystal Nova, seems pretty good to me. Now, her innate ability, Blue Heart Flow, now levels up with Freezing Field, and a mana regen amplification rescaled from 50 to 25, so on the low end, to up to 100 at the last level. Pretty crazy good. Lastly, they replaced her level 10 talent of 100 Crystal Nova AoE with 12 intelligence. So in terms of choices, not that much of a decision here. Either 12 intelligence or 200 health. You're probably going to pick the 200 health for Crystal Maiden. Okay, Dawnbreaker, they got rid of her Gleaming Hammer facet. Most people didn't really pick it anyway. It basically allowed you to increase the hammer's pause duration, which was cool, I guess. I don't know. Starbreaker, now they have a new facet called Star Search, so now she has 3 facets. Starbreaker, after the final smash, all allies within a 700 radius gain 18 bonus attack speed per each Starbreaker swipe or smash that hits an enemy hero. Really easy for Starbreaker, Dawnbreaker, especially when she comes in for ultimate, or she blinks and has an Echo Saber that slows and pretty much guarantees to hit. Dawnbreaker herself gains 32 attack speed. Pretty good. Trailblazer, Celestial Hammer, Dawnbreaker and her allied heroes gain 25% bonus movement speed when walking on Hammer's fire trail, and for 1 second after leaving it. Also good, though, depends on the circumstance, right? Your range on your Celestial Hammer is pretty decent. However, sometimes it's usually just used as a finisher, and not really for to chase someone down or to slow them, so to speak. So kind of dependent on your preference here. I do like the attack speed for Star Surge, especially because it's so easy to land it, and giving everybody an increased attack speed is definitely appealing as a posture as you jump in with your Solar Guardian. However, if you remember what her original facet is, Solar Charge, it's whenever Dawnbreaker hits the target with a powered up Luminosity, that's her crit heal ability, her passive ability, she increases the cooldowns of all her other abilities. So during those sustained long-term fights, especially in the late game, that also could be really appealing. So it's hard for me to kind of claim which one's the best. I do think Star Search comes in pretty strong here, especially because Dawnbreaker also gains attack speed from it, which is pretty much one of her weaker points towards the late game, where she does her Starbreaker, she does her Celestial Hammer, And that's it. Then she kind of has to back off, or maybe she fights a little bit more with lowered attack speed and needs to pick up an assault cuirass or whatever. So that's interesting, but maybe Star Surge is going to be better for more of an offensive, auto-attacking based Dawnbreaker. Not sure, kind of guessing here. Aghanim Scepter has been reworked. So if you don't remember Aghanim Scepter before, it used to be able to move. Whenever you cast a Solar Guardian, it used to be able to move a little bit towards, let's say, targets as they start to pull back. It also gave evasion and I think better healing for your teammates. Now Solar Guardian's pulsing aura now lingers for 3 seconds after landing and follows Dawnbreaker around. So as you land, you have this big AoE damage dealing and heal that continues to follow you. It also increases the heal per pulse while reducing channel airtime from 1.70.8 to 10.10.0.5. So basically, it's a better version than the previous Aghanim Scepter. The previous Aghanim Scepter had you going for a longer time, so you couldn't be in the fight, but you would give more heal and evasion and damage, so it's kind of like a trade-off. In this one, it's now, you're going to channel it and you're going to land much more quickly, but you still get that longer duration that you're hoping for from the previous Aghanim Scepter. So this is kind of cool. Dragonite Facet Fire Dragon has been reworked. So now it deals, looks like mostly magic damage. While in Dragon form, Dragon Tail applies to enemies in 175 radius around the target. And in Worm's Wrath, deals 40 bonus magic damage to enemies and increases all AoE effects by 100. So kind of cool. So basically the Fire Dragon Facet Dragonite deals additional magic damage with his attacks. And Dragonite's abilities have increased area effect that gets stronger when in Elder Dragon form. Now on the flip side, Corrosive Dragon makes all of Dragonite's abilities deal physical damage, which is kind of cool. Breathe Fire change to physical, Dragon Tail change to physical, Worm's Wrath, Corrosive Breath type change to physical, and the Fireball also changed to physical. Now Corrosive Dragon Facet is kind of seen as the early game facet. It's seen for a more active Dragonite that tends to get a blink, maybe an Orchid or Mage Slayer, jumps in, kind of deals a ton of damage to enemies. The physical means that basically, unless you have like phase boots and like a blade mail, your armor is relatively low in the early game. Towards the mid game, it's not as great, right? So it kind of corners Corrosive Dragon into a very specific type of damage dealing, evidently. Whereas the Fire Dragon still has its splash, it still has that mid game great timing of farming, but now also deals bonus magic damage with Worm's Wrath. So kind of cool. I think Fire Dragon is still the one to be, but Corrosive Dragon could be a nice kind of change up. So when you pick Dragonite, you can look at the enemy lineup, you can say, okay, these guys are going to mostly build armor, or these guys are going to have mostly a lot of health and a lot of magic resistance, and I'll choose between Corrosive Dragon and Fire Dragon. And one way or another, you're going to say, I'm never going to pick Frost Dragon, because I don't think they've ever buffed or looked at Frost Dragon in like a year plus. I don't know. It's pretty hilarious. The abilities for Elder Dragon form. While in Dragon form, attacks now apply 60% of the damage to targets in the attack slash AoE. It now improves the effects of Worm's Wrath by 50% regardless of the chosen facet. So Elder Dragon form has been buffed overall. The bonus movement speed, unfortunately, has been decreased. So your maneuverability around the map is going to be slower, but hopefully the new river currents help even that out. Also, the attack splash AoE has been decreased from 350 to 275. Okay, Invoker is kind of insane. Basically, he's now an intelligence hero for starters. 2, they got rid of the agnostic and elitist facets, which pretty much led the hero to being more around his early game potential, right? With Witchblade, like with Hurricane Pike, etc. Now it's really about which version of Invoker do you want to play? Do you want to play more of this disable / enabling your team with the mind of Tornaris? I'm never going to pronounce these words correctly. Or you want to be more of an kind of an early game slow damage dealer with Cold Snap and Quas. Don't forget that the Quaswex Exhort also give value to Invoker, right? So Quas gives you bonus HP regeneration as well as bonus strength per level, so you have more survivability, and obviously you have more survivability in the lane. Whereas Wex gives you more movement speed, so obviously more of a ganking element to the hero. Also gives you bonus agility, so you're attacking faster and dealing damage. And then Exhort gives you bonus attack damage and gives you bonus intelligence per level of Exhort. So really, you should be looking at these heroes as 3 ways to play the hero, right? Are you more of an attacking hero? Are you more of a disabling hero? Are you more of an early game hero, etc.? So that's kind of my understanding of the hero. However, I'm also not an Invoker player, so I'm just gonna be straight up about that. That's going to be my general understanding of how they're kind of approaching the facets, and Invoker being this universal, not attributes, but universal applicable hero depending on the lineup and depending how you want to approach the hero. So Jakiro no longer has the Liquid Fire, Liquid Frost facets. Pretty much everybody chose Liquid Frost. It was the better one by a mile. Now you get both anyway. However, he has new facets now. Twin Terror, which is affecting his innate ability, Double Trouble. There was a damage penalty of like 50%. But with each macro power level, it can do better damage with each attack. So with Double Trouble, you're basically attacking with one head and then the other. Now you're still doing it, but with the Twin Terror facet, the damage reduction is no longer what, 50%, 40%. It's now 25% per level macro power. So as the game goes on, you would deal more damage if you auto attack. But honestly, who's really thinking about that? Maybe that's just me. As for the other one that I think is more interesting, Icebreaker, the path duration is increased from 3.5, 4 to just straight up 6 seconds. Upon expiration, Ice Path detonates, dealing an additional 225 damage, stunning enemies for 0.5 seconds a time. And while the path exists, ability is replaced with a sub ability, which allows Jakiro to detonate his Ice Path early. So you don't need to do Ice Path to freeze the enemy for a long time. You can actually just pop it right there and then to deal extra damage and stunning for a second time. So really the way you should see these two facets is Twin Terror is for the mid Jakiros that are ruining all your games, and Icebreaker is for the better Jakiros, the good ones. Everything else not as important as understanding these two facets and what division of applicability they have. Juggernaut real quick, basically his level 20 talent no longer has 50% Blade Dance Lifesteal. It's now replaced with 2 Healing Ward hits to kill. Now the 50% Blade Dance Lifesteal is at 25, so Juggernaut has been nerfed effectively. His Blade Dance Lifesteal is pretty much the cornerstone to late game Juggernaut outside of his Omni Slash and Swift Slash abilities, so big bummer for him. Finally, Kez now has 2 facets. Flutter, 1, switch discipline. Kez deals 12% more damage on first attack or ability after switching to Katana, and gains 12% bonus movement speed for 2 seconds after switching to Sai. This is really good. Not just in general, but if you go Aghanim Scepter, which is right now the core build for Kez, really nice. And now the second one, Shadowhawk, Shadow Sai, triggering a Shadow Sai mark from invisibility. So you can do this when you pop your ultimate ability, not the Raptor Dance, but rather the Falcon Rush. When you pop Falcon Rush, right, you apply a Shadow Sai mark on people as you go invisible. But more importantly, when Kez triggers a Shotosai mark, he reduces the cooldown of both Shotosai and Katsurai Katana by 20, 30, 40, 50%. The Shotosai ability that's being cooldown or reduced or cooldown here is the one where you can parry and applies a mark back. And the Katsurai Katana ability is strangely only, if I remember, it's only the Ag Shard, but maybe they changed that. No, it doesn't look like it. So I don't know what cooldown they're reducing for Katsurai Katana, except for the Ag Shard, which basically applies that DPS effect that you've built up on enemy heroes and basically twists it to like apply it all at once. So it just basically finishes off an opponent, seppuku style, but towards an enemy. I don't know if that was insensitive, but I apologize. So kind of interesting. I think Flutter is going to be definitely the one that comes across more appealing. However, Shadowhawk, maybe I'm misreading it. Nonetheless, that should be pretty good. Grappling Claw no longer grants flat bonus hero lifesteal, and lifesteal and attack has been rescaled to 50, 70, 100, 125%. The Katsurai Katana, here's what we talked about. The Ag Shard cast range increased from 150 to 200, and the Ag Shard cooldown increased from 5 to 20, 15, 10, 5 to make this, I guess, more appealing. I don't know. Raptor Dance now follows global lifesteal rules. No longer provide the debuff immunity and a hard dispel. So this is kind of a big nerf. The Raptor Dance, basically when you... Oh, I'll read the rest here. Now provide the basic dispel and 0.1 second invulnerability period on cast and complete magic damage immunity for the duration. Okay, so so basically what happens is that when you had Raptor Dance, you would basically use it to get out of... You would basically cast it and had a small channel time and use it to get out of some dispel, some crowd control. And it would give you debuff immunity so nobody could interrupt you as you channeled it. The enemies just had to run. Which was kind of not that intuitive for people who didn't know what the hell they were looking at. Now it provides the basic dispel and invulnerability when you're casting it, so the channel time. And then when you're using Raptor Dance, you have magic damage immunity, but you're not stopped. You do not prevent crowd control like stuns or silences from occurring. I'm not sure if silences are going to stop the Raptor Dance because it's already occurring, right? It's not a channeled ability. It's only being channeled to be casted, but I know stuns for sure will probably stop it, at least that's my assumption. Falcon Rush can now change targets while rushing, which is very nice. Gives a little bit more flexibility on Falcon Rush. The rush range has been decreased again, probably because the chase for it is just insane. The attack rate, though, has been increased from 1.2, 1.1 to 1 to 1.3, 1.2 to 1. The Katana base attack rate has also been increased, and the attack speed factor increased from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% to 12%. So overall, it's a net buff. I would understand that. Maybe somebody can correct me about the base attack rate changes as well as the attack speed factor, but my understanding is that it scales better, but initially is not as great and has less reach. Talent Toss is now dealing physical damage, so it was probably one of your few magic abilities. Now it's physical. And Shadow Side no longer slows marked targets. Aghanim Shard no longer grants bonus movement speed. I completely forgot that the Ag Shard for Shadow Side was also applicable, but basically, yeah. Now it no longer grants bonus movement speed. Okay, Lifestealer, he no longer has the Rage or Unfettered Facets. Cool idea. Didn't really work out. People didn't really get it. Not going to talk about it too much. I understood that Rage was for kind of your BKB basically, but if you got Orchid, if you got, affected by Orchid, then you couldn't cast Rage. You had to die BKB, and Unfettered is the opposite. Didn't give you BKB, but it could be casted even when you were stunned or silenced. I think it sounds right. I can't remember. Anyway, and it gave you some status resistance and magic resistance, if I recall. Feast. Now, Flesh Feast, new facet. Max HP per kill, hero kill increased from 15 to 55, depending on the current level of Infest. So, very much for a more offensive lifesteal that maybe goes like Armlet Dezo. Maybe could be the thing. Helps them scale up into late game with back more HP. And open wounds cooldown is reset if a hero dies while afflicted by open wounds. So yeah, definitely sounds like it's more of an offensive, active lifestealer. The Gore Storm Infest allows the ability to be used on ancient creeps. So even at level 1, I think it takes up to level 2 to be able to use Infest on ancient creeps previously. Now, obviously, it's going to be only for Gore Storm. Consuming creep drenches affected enemies in blood for 3 seconds. So when you jump out of the infest, that's basically consuming the creep. It will drench enemies. It does an AoE damage. It drenches enemies where they take damage equal to 20%, 25% of the host's remaining health over the duration. So obviously really good when you pick up, let's say, those Geodudes, I can't remember their names, those golems. When cast with Aghanim Scepter, Gore Storm is equal to 25% of damage done to the hosted enemy hero by lifesteal over the duration of Infest. If you don't know the Ag Scepter for Lifestealer, basically you jump into an enemy, you disable them, and you do periodic damage for a longer duration, and then you jump out. Has also lower cooldown, I think, on Infest, if I remember. So now the Gore Storm, instead of doing, let's say, max health of the host in which you infested and consumed, now it's going to do 25% of the damage done to the hosted enemy hero by lifesteal over the duration of Infest. Now, I think what's also not really talked about here is that there's an Ag Shard for Lifestealer where when you use it, let's say, when you use Infest, it also applies a 50% duration open wounds to enemies in the damage radius of your Infest. So, again, there's a lot of applicability here, and more important, there's a lot of interesting synergy between the Ag Scepter. Now this scalable 25% damage effect in the radius of the Infest ability, and then now the Ag Shard now applying open wounds as well. So could be interesting. I definitely like these facets more. I'm probably going to lean more on I think Flesh Feast as in general, just because cooldown resetting of a hero dies while afflicted by open wounds, especially if the Ag Shard looks really strong, plus getting hero kills from the mid to late game at 55 depending on the current level of Infest seems really good. However, Gore Storm, maybe Ag Scepter Infest ability is coming back. If you guys remember with Radiance, excuse me, not Ag Scepter. You guys remember that old like ancient creeps with Radiance infesting, and you would just run at people at this like super race card speed, and then just literally just wipe them out. I think this could be back. That's my immediate thoughts. So Magnus, right? Magnus reverse polarity and reverse polarity. That's gone. Nobody chose to reverse polarity except for memers and people who hate your team. So now there's 2 new facets. Diminishing return is effectively, I guess, the Ag Shard, right? Increases the max level of Shockwave to 5. Number of times plus 2 attributes decreased from 7 to 6, just because you don't have the levels to do that anymore. The Shockwave at level 5 makes a Shockwave return once it reaches the max distance, traveling 200 units further and dealing 50% of the damage back on its way back. So instead of having to wait till level 14 to grab the Ag Shard, minute 14 to grab the Ag Shard, now you get it at level 5, so it comes earlier, and it does the fast ability. We talked about it in the video about Magnus and this Ag Shard ability, so definitely check that out. And power ability is always enabled on Magnus, so you can farm obviously very fast with this. Affects your early game, right? Because you push the lane up a little bit with that, but nonetheless, every one of his subsequent attacks increases his self bonus by 2, 3, 4, 5% up to a max of 10, 15, 20, 25%. Each stack refreshes the duration. Bonus per hit and max bonus scale with level up in power. So you still have to level up in power, but evidently it has a perpetuating value of growth as you attack with it. Really strong and really appealing for a Magnus that wants that mid game Echo Saber Harpoon skewer combo. And they also changed skewer, by the way. Now deals 6, 9, 12, 15% of the distance traveled as damage, so no longer dealing damage per tree or cliff hit by default. I think there's just so many cliffs and trees now that might not be that appealing. I know even healing Lotus fountains and weird rock formations caused you to deal like cliff damage, so it was kind of weird, but yeah, I'm kind of curious to see if this brings back Magnus Harpoon build. Now upgraded with Ag Shard, increases skewer range by 275 and deals an additional typo there, 30 damage per tree hit and 125 damage for cliff hit. So looks like skewer is probably going to be the main form of ganking Magnus, in my opinion, but let's see what happens. Okay, cool. Marci is back. Sidekick, bodyguard facets are gone. Honestly, the bodyguard facet was kind of unclear for a lot of people. I don't want to talk about it that much because it's pretty much a piece of shit anyway. And Sidekick was the default pick anyway for the lifesteal. Now there's 3 facets to make you want to get confused even more. So the buddy system, bodyguard. While bodyguarded, Marci and her partner share 100% of health healed by this ability with each other. So just like the Sidekick facet was before, the pick-me-up adds a self-cat and alt-cast, which allows Marci to bring a target ally with her to her final destination. The ally deals 25% of the rebound damage to enemies on landing, won't affect rooted or leashed allies. Really cool, makes Marci this support hero that can really take advantage of, let's say, a blink. Kind of interesting to see how that was going to work out. People are going to use that. It's going to be pretty funny to see that as well. I mean, if you really want to be a big memer, you can do like Marci Pudge with infested Lifestealer in being jumped over to the ideal target. That's pretty crazy. Also makes ganking with Marci all the more pertinent, right? Rebound gives you such a significant range that sometimes you separate from your teammates, where the gank is just not all that great. And now Fleeting Fury, if Marci has Unleashed leveled after landing from rebound, so post 6, Marci gains a short Fury combo. If Unleash is already active, its duration is extended by 3 seconds. This combo has 3 hits instead of 5, and Aghanim Scepter doesn't apply silence to it. Okay, really cool as well. Basically, this is also, it sounds like it could be for either support or carry, but maybe somebody can correct me. Basically, if you have your ultimate ability Unleash already leveled, then if you do a rebound on a target, you can punch him 3 times instead of 5, and it will do an extra wave of damage like you would do when you punch him 5 times, right? Now, also, if you have Unleash already active and you rebound on a target, you will the duration will be extended by 3. I'm not sure if that means that if you have Unleash active and you rebound, then all your hits are going to be basically all your combos before the big AoE effect is at 3, or it's just for that specific rebound duration or that specific rebound effect. We'll see, but nonetheless, it means more of a singular capability for Marci to take down the target after jumping them with rebound. Lastly, she also has a new ability, special delivery, active component. Marci whistles and instantly teleports her courier to her. Definitely great for those who can go maybe bottle with Marci. Oh no, can you still bottle? No, you cannot, right? Or you get 2 charges, or I can't recall. Definitely good if you're dealing with a bounty hunter and you forget to buy your dust, then get your courier over there. Or you need a quick item, or you're holding onto a divine rapier on the courier, and then you bring it right when you're ready to fight, then you're no longer in trouble. Those are some ideas I have. Maybe you have some other ones for me. Rebound mana cost has been rescaled naturally. Aghanim Shard no longer decreases cooldown, but it now increases the damage by 20%, so it gives a little bit more scaling on rebound. Definitely a first buy item for those roaming Marcis. Bodyguard, which is the psychic you might know as Psychic, now longer provides bonus armor, now provides the selected ally with 75% of the lifesteal and damage bonus instead of 100% of health healed by this ability with each other. So slight differentiation between the two. Let's talk about Morphling. Basically, the adaptive strike strength ability is no longer there. The ebb of flow, now ebb is part of the adaptive strike strength ability as it merged with the agility one. Basically, waveform now attacks all targets go through with 50% of Morphling's attack damage, just like before. Basically, what made Morphling really strong. Adaptive strike no longer locks back enemies. It's moved to the base spell. We'll talk about that in a second. Accumulation no longer grants 100% bonus stats from the talent tree, all attribute bonus, which is kind of the other part of what made Morphling strong, right? You basically just max out your bonus stats and you would get double of it, so you could farm much more quickly with Morphling, and you would have insane stats from the get-go as leveling that up. Now, talent trees, all attribute bonus provides an additional +3 to Morphling's primary attribute, so it's a little more flexible depending if you choose the ebb or flow facet, and I'll talk about the flow facet in a second. Adaptive strike merged both abilities into one. Now knocks back enemies by default. Distance is between 50 to 350 units based on Morphling strength. So now you're not only doing big nuke damage with the agility, but now you're also pushing enemies back with based on Morphling strength. Pretty cool. No longer stuns enemies by default. Yep. Then there's the attribute shift has been slightly changed. It's just overall cheaper, more expensive in the early game, cheaper in the late game. Morph now keeps his attributes while morphed. I think this is a pretty underrated change. Basically, sometimes when you would morph into an enemy, you would have less health, and so it would be straight up bad. Or if you morphed into an enemy and they had less agility, it means you attacked slower until you morphed back. It was kind of annoying, but nonetheless. The flow version of this Morphling facet, it changes Morphling's primary attribute to strength. So this is the support Morphlings that are also trying to ruin your games. Hopefully this new version makes it better. Morphling gains plus 1% spell amp per 4 agility. Spell amplification effect is breakable. So anything like the new Conda or the Silver Edge or even Hoodwink's ultimate sharpshooter would break your spell amp. Adaptive strike stuns enemy target for 0.5 to 2.4 seconds, depending on Morphling strength, has the same rule as knockable effect. So basically, this flow version, you still want to seek out to build up agility, but there is a value in having strength because it stuns the target for a significant portion. So the flow version is definitely for a casting Morphling. However, I would say that the balance between finding enough agility, putting a lot of points in agility so you could deal a lot of magic damage versus keep enough strength because it's your primary attribute in one of your main damage dealing forms because of the stats from strength means that you as Morphling are a little conflicted. But I think this is going to create some unique and creative style for Morphling players. So Phantom Assassin, no longer Veiled One facet. It was inherently the weaker one. Most people chose Methodical because Methodical gave you some guaranteed crit. Let you build away from Desolator, gave you some sustainability to Sanjay and Yasha. The coup de grace has been decreased from Methodical from 575% to now 500%, so it's just weaker. It used to be one of the points to pick Methodical as well. You had a higher crit damage. Now there's a new facet for Phantom Assassin. I'm not quite sure its applicability, but basically when you use Stifling Dagger, whenever a dagger hits and does not kill an enemy, it leaves a stacking debuff that lasts for 6 seconds. When the debuff unit dies, they launch one Stifling Dagger per stack at random enemies around the target, prioritizing heroes. These daggers have 50% damage and slow duration values. Stacks can't be dispelled, and each new dagger refreshes the duration of all current stacks. Recast range equals Stifling Dagger's cast range centered around the debuffed enemy. So basically, it's for those PAs that don't want to jump in but want to continue stacking damage, or even maybe want to finish off an opponent with a dagger, and then it will spread to other people. So basically, this Methodical version is the one we currently know and love, where we jump in and we fight, and we beat down people, and then fight again, etc. And the Sweet Release one is for the Phantom Assassins, who kind of play like the Veiled One, where you're kind of off-putting or offsetting the need for stats to have some survivability. You're still relying on random crit chance to be able to kill opponents, but now your Stifling Dagger can be used as a poke and prod with additional value before you jump in and try and snag a kill with your Desolator. So basically you dagger, get some stacks, jump in, maybe kill someone, and then it'll spread to other people. They will also have dagger stacks, and you keep that going, right? You keep that bouncing around, keep trying to get kills, and keep trying to make the game work in your favor, or in a fight in your favor as soon as you jump in. This also means that your blur now isn't removed on attack by default, which is great, which means it could be relatively powerful, especially with maybe the Ag Scepter, I think, maybe come back. I'm talking a little bit out of my ass here. Can't recall too much, but nonetheless, definitely an interesting approach to giving the old PA version style of gameplay some added value towards the mid-late game. So real quick about Pudge, they removed Flare's hook facet. It was bullshit anyway, but don't worry, it's back as an ag shard. So this new saving Pudge where you would go ag shard and you would blink and you would eat someone and save them and run away. It was like the ultimate save of all time that all Pudge players didn't want to do anyway because they hate everybody but themselves. That's gone now. Now Pudge has basically two forms of his typical playstyle, which is all aggression. One is the fresh meat dismember, which you know, right? Strength is increased by 135 to now 246. And then this new Rotten Core mixes up the high damage that Pudge typically deals in the early game, and now kind of mixes it with his Rot, with this new facet of Rotten Core. So while Rot is active, Pudge gains 4, 8, 12, 16% bonus attack damage every second, up to 20, 40, 60, 80% max bonus attack damage after 5 seconds. And once you turn off Rot, the damage over, starts to decay after over 1 second. So basically, now instead of just running around and rotting like a madman, you can run around, rot, attack, run around, rot, attack, and you'll have a lot of damage, right? It's scalable damage at 16%, and that obviously goes up with the more stacks that you get as Pudge, especially if it goes with your strength, if I recall, right? With the flesh sheep innate ability, Pudge's skin thickens permanently every time he kills an enemy, gaining 2 bonus strength at max level for each stack. So more kills with more rot, more kills of strength means you have more damage as well as more survivability, which means you can rot for longer, which means you can deal more damage and deal maximum bonus attack damage after 5 seconds. So it makes Pudge an actually true core, so to speak, especially as the game scales more in his favor and he gets a lot of ganking kills. Kind of curious to see if this is going to be making Pudge back to pause 1 or at least pause 3. Ringmaster has some new facets and he's added the captain mode. The first one is Carney Classic, so it's basically the two facets are kind of siloing the different souvenirs that you can get. Set Stark Carnival souvenirs to Funhouse Mirror, Strongman Tonic, and Whoopee Cushion. If you don't remember what these were, Whoopee Cushion did a smoke of rot that I think also bounced you. Strongman Tonic gave you a lot of strength, and Funhouse Mirror gave you an illusion. Whereas Sideshow Secrets, these are the new souvenirs you probably don't know of. Crystal Ball scans a targeted 450 area for 4 seconds, indicates whether there's heroes there in the area, reveals invis units and wards in the scanned area, but does not provide vision. Pretty cool. So good support item. Unicycle, Ringmaster mounts a speedy unicycle to ride around for 10 seconds, crashing into trees, destroys them, and slows the unicycle, attacking, using abilities, taking damage, picking up runes, and other stuff. Basically gets you off the unicycle. So really nice for like a roaming pause 4 Ringmaster, or just a Ringmaster that needs to get into the team fight early or quickly. Weighted Pie tosses a pie into the target enemy, knocking them back and reduces their vision by 50. Vision recovers over 2 seconds. The targets won't provide their vision over the duration. The pie instantly kills any non-ancient creep. So really nice Weighted Pie can be used to maybe farm some hard camps quickly, or really cool way of reducing the vision of your targets. Both of them are great. I think Sideshow Secrets is probably the default pick. Carney Classics is appealing, but can't really see its value over, let's say, Sideshow Secrets. Silencer, another hero that seems to have fallen outside of the meta, but can't seem to really find his identity in this whole thing. But the Arcane Curse has been reworked. Curses the target area, dealing damage and causing enemy heroes to take damage over time and slowing their movement speed, just like before. Silence enemies take 1.5 slow and damage, so great for ultimate. Anytime affected enemies cast a spell, the duration is increased. The duration is paused as long as the target is silenced. I don't really know what's different here. Compared to previous iterations, ability duration can now be decreased by status resistance or increased by debuff duration bonuses. What changed? I actually have no clue what changed here, but maybe I haven't played the hero in a long time. Glaives of Wisdom no longer silences enemies after attacking the target for 4 times. However, into damage percentage has been increased early on, 20 to 35, 80% at the end anyway. And then Last Word has been reworked. I think Last Word is probably the more forgotten abilities compared to what it was before. So now you can enchant a target, providing vision of them and cause them to be damaged and silenced if they cast a spell or if the enchantment timer expires. Deals extra damage based on the difference in intelligence between silencer and the target. This is basically the old Last Word, and now it's back, which is pretty much pretty funny. So basically, Silencer is back to what it was before, but just slightly better, especially with Glaives of Wisdom and his innate ability giving you silence. So pretty cool effect. Pretty cool change for Silencer. Definitely could see him picked a lot more. Okay, Spectre being a universal attribute hero is hell on earth, and by God, there's nobody happy about this except for Spectre players and everybody who gets to play for Spectre. Obviously, his damage has been rescaled and adjusted, but I'm not sure if that's really going to stop him. Spectre already builds pretty much a variety of items like Scotty, like Orchid, Bloodthorn. So these stats are just going to help him scale even better towards the late game. He has a reworked facet. His Desolate deals 1.75x damage, but Spectre's illusions can no longer trigger Desolate. I don't think that's really that appealing. Most people would probably choose Twist the Knife. However, now Twist the Knife has been slightly nerfed. It no longer decreases cooldown. I think nobody's really going to cry about that, to be honest, in comparison to him now being her now being a universal attribute hero. Damage reflected has also been decreased from 20 to 19%, so barely a decrease towards the late game, but early game is about 4%. And everything else is pretty much the same. So basically, if you don't know Spirit Breaker, right, he had his imbalance facet removed. Nobody really used it. It was basically the imbalance facet where if you stun someone, they would get pushed further away, which nobody wanted. So now there's 2 really cool facets. One is the one you know and hate, Bull Rush, where you get bonus movement speed that lingers from your Charge of Darkness, that lingers after you hit the target. So you can hit the target, run away, and have the increased movement speed that nobody can shut you down from. Bull's Hit is now the new one, where if you bash into more than one hero within the last 10 seconds, each additional hero past the first increases greater bash chance by 17%. So just bashing like 2 or 3 heroes is an insane amount of increase. It's a 50% increase of likelihood that you're going to bash, plus the 17% that's already happening likelihood from the ability itself, which means that you are very likely to bash on the first or second hit, and then you can follow up with an ultimate. So it's charge in with Charge of Darkness, get a greater bash in for damage, attack once or twice during that duration of the stun, to then hopefully get another bash in, and then finish them off with another ultimate for 3 times the magic damage, and wiping out most support heroes that you're probably targeting in the backline. Okay, Windranger, still universal attribute hero, has had its damage adjusted. No longer has the whirlwind versus focus fire facets, probably because one or the other was ended up being too good. However, the new facets are pretty cool, and quite honestly, they look like they could be pretty good for support Windranger off the top of my head, even core Windranger for that matter, or mid laner for that matter. Shackle Shot applies to all units and trees behind a target, each granting Windranger bonus attack damage for 6 seconds. Each shackled hero provides 36 damage, while trees and other units provide 50% less. Primary shackle shot target doesn't provide any damage. So really nice. Basically, you want to use your shackle shot on like a creep or a tree. I mean, you can't really use it on a tree, but on a creep, and hopefully it shackles the enemy to then give Windranger bonus damage. Really cool if you can shackle 2 heroes, evidently. As for the other facet, kill shot, power shot, the arrow instantly executes enemy heroes below a certain threshold. So it's like a calling blade on axe, except it's Windranger and an insane range and really fast speed. It's instant, so you don't have to charge it up. You can just channel it. Execute threshold literally increases with the channeling time. So if the hero really low, just shoot it out. Pretty much what your goal with power shot. And if it's a hero that is kind of low but not low enough at 12%, then you want to fully charge it up. So always great, really strong. I can see this. I mean, this happens pre-6. This happens pre-level 6. So it can pretty much be useful even as a roaming Windranger to screw around with the mid laner for enemy mid laners. I mean, it's definitely concerning. Power shot has been rescaled to be a little more expensive. But overall, Windranger now has... She still has a focus fire, so no more whirlwind, but the way you can go about killing heroes is now much more pertinent and also has a lot more value depending on if you want a late game where you could just do 12% of their max health and then have it instantly kill them, or you can get that bonus damage in the mid game and more importantly kill them. Remember that Windranger doesn't have Gleipnir anymore, or rather she can buy it because she's a universal attribute hero, but there's no more Maelstrom effect to it, which is unfortunate. So Winter Wyvern is gone from universal attribute classification. Thank God. Is now an intelligence hero. She's got 2 great facets. One is Cold Embrace, can be cast on buildings. Chosen buildings isn't healed, but still protected from physical damage. Affected units or buildings gain 60% bonus attack damage after the cocoon thaws. Buff duration. So kind of like Treant Protector's passive ability or passive healing ability, or like Ogre Magi's attack speed buff that can be applied to towers. Now Winter Wyvern can also do it. That doesn't heal them but protects them from physical damage, so helps stall certain pushes. Pretty cool. Affected units also in buildings gain 60% bonus attack damage after the cocoon thaw, so really nice to then glyph after that if you can. And on top of that, if the effect is both Cold Embrace and Glyph, then the buff duration isn't paused and lane creeps don't have this interaction. So it has some caveats, but still pretty cool. Now, Recursive Winter's Curse makes all affected enemies take 125% of physical, magical, and pure damage from Winter Wyvern. So this is more for the core mid Winter Wyverns that continue to ruin my games. Whenever the cursed enemy dies, Winter's Curse is recast on the lowest health enemy hero affected by the curse. The recast has minimum maximum and bonus durations equal to 50% of the default spell. So really good to, once you get to that even early mid-late game period, when you can start really attacking really hard and really from afar. For Winter Wyvern, obviously they removed the Dragon Sight, so you're not getting any bonus damage from range, but nonetheless you're dealing a ton of damage during your Winter's Curse. And on top of that, if you catch anyone in it, then they also get affected when they have the lowest health. So pretty wild stuff. So in my opinion, this patch, no nerfs to Radiance, no nerfs to Glimmer Cape. Surprisingly, massive drops of strength to a lot of heroes to help curb the power creep. Same map, but slightly different feeling, especially when it comes to traversing and navigating it. We're definitely going to see a lot of upcoming letter patches. I think there's a lot of things here that could be adjusted for, especially when it comes to some of these items, but more importantly when it comes to these neutral items as well. I think they're still going to favor some heroes over others. Really like the approach they're still pushing for, which is just a lot more active games, right? Early game tend to be a little active, mid game always ended up quieting down, and then late game was just kind of the finisher at 30 minutes, 35 minutes. So kind of curious to see what's going to happen here. But yeah, if you're still here, thanks for watching, and please check out my Twitch channel where I'm going to be testing guides and answering all questions I didn't get to answer here.